I am super excited about the All Things Possible series that we are beginning here with session 1. And I just want to back up a little bit and tell you how this all got started. It all began when our youth at Hickory Grove Baptist Church decided that the theme for their fall retreat in 2019 would be WHATAP, W-H-A-T-A-P. In fact, they handed out these bracelets that have Grove Youth on them on one side, and on the other side, those initials. That stands for, with Him, all things are possible. That was their theme for their fall retreat back in 2019. When I found out about it, I was super excited, and it was just a great reminder to me. I sometimes have to be reminded, like, wait, God can do anything. And I believe this. And my whole life and ministry is preaching, and everything that I do is built upon that foundation that all things are possible with God. It's such an obvious thing, but it's a thing that we miss too often in life. So I loved that reminder. And at the time that they were doing their fall retreat, I was also training for a marathon, Indianapolis Monumental Marathon to be exact. And based on my training and based on a prior marathon that I had run, I was getting closer and closer to qualifying for the Boston Marathon. For a man my age, in order to qualify, you have to run that marathon in 3 hours and 20 minutes. And I wanted to meet that goal. But I felt like for my age, and I'd never run that fast before, I'd be trimming off roughly 9 minutes off my prior time, which is a pretty big chunk. I knew it was a lofty goal. But once I found out about that theme for the youth, I'm like, that's it. I'm setting that goal. I want to qualify for the Boston Marathon. I grabbed a bracelet from our next generation pastor, Tim Blake, and started wearing it in my training runs. And I knew I was going to wear it during the race as well. And I was also reminded by a friend named Chris Lorenz, who I've met training for the marathon. He reminded me of Philippians 4:13, where it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Turns out I have a big wall print in my office reminding me of that. I see it right in front of me every time I sit at my desk. So sometimes God's got to remind you of the obvious right in front of you. I can do all things. I can do the impossible in your life. You just got to trust in me. You got to rely on me. So as it turns out, I'd set this goal to qualify for Boston. Well, I'm going to give you the spoiler right now. I did not qualify for the Boston Marathon. I missed it by 27 seconds. I finished that race in 3 hours, 20 minutes, and 27 seconds. And because of that, I have to tell you, even though that was the best time I'd ever run for a marathon, when I crossed the finish line, it was hard to not just be simply disappointed. I did not meet that goal. Now, what I would tell you, I learned a huge lesson that day. God still did the impossible, because for the first time in running, I'd hit the proverbial wall. I don't know if you've heard about hitting the wall in a race before, but I hit it. Hit it at mile 20. Literally, as I'm passing by the mile 20 marker, my body just slowed down. No matter how hard I tried to get it to still run the same speed it was running before, it just would not respond. It's a common experience in marathon running, and I thought I'd experienced it before. Turns out the other times I was just experiencing soreness that hurt. This was a whole, hey, my brain telling my body, you don't have enough energy. You don't have enough carbs in your system. You don't have enough glycogen in your system. You have no more fuel in you, so I'm shutting you down. So the last 6 miles felt like an eternity. And instead, God did something else impossible. He helped me finish. To actually finish that race, to actually keep going one step at a time for the next 6 miles, it was incredible. And it taught me something, that sometimes the impossibility I have named before God may not be the one that He's going to accomplish in my life. And that's why all of this requires a lot of faith, to trust God with our impossibilities, to certainly name those impossibilities before Him, but trust Him, to trust that He knows what He's doing and He's going to do what's best in our lives. So this first session about all things possible, we're looking at Jesus Christ Himself as an example. When He began His public ministry, He was facing an incredible impossibility, the salvation of sinful humanity. And when I think about that, I've never thought about it as something that Jesus had to kind of gear up for. But if you look at the story of his life, he had his baptism where there was this huge moment where God the Father said, "This is my son, in him I am well pleased." And the first thing that happens after that is that he ends up going into the wilderness, being led by the Spirit, and he stays there for 40 days and 40 nights. He fasts for 40 days and nights. And it's during that time that God the Father prepared God the Son for what he was about to do. He came out of that season of 40 days and 40 nights and began his public ministry. He was focused, seeking and saving that which is lost. He withstood the criticism and the trappings of the religious leaders of that day that wanted to throw him off, that wanted to discount him. What Jesus was facing was so big, it had such an impact on him, that when you fast forward to his time in the Garden of Gethsemane before he was arrested, in Luke 22, it even describes that he was so distressed that he was sweating drops of blood. It's so easy to forget that the cross that Jesus suffered on for us so that we could have salvation was a big deal. And to him, he needed to depend on the Father like never before. He prayed and he got his disciples to pray that night of his arrest. And he spent, before he even began his public ministry 3 years prior, fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. That's the thing that we need to be reminded of. The big truth is that you deal with your impossibility by deepening your dependence on the one who does the impossible. That's how we prepare for our impossibilities. We deepen our dependence on him. He's the one that can do anything. So we don't gear ourselves up necessarily as much as we gear our connection with God up. And one of the ways that can be done is through fasting. And so we're teaching a little bit about that in this opening session. Jesus did that. And there's lots of ways that you can fast. I would boil it down to 4 categories. You have a complete fast, where people actually don't eat any food, and maybe it's a juice fast or a water fast. And I would tell you, it's super important that you talk to your doctor before doing something like that, especially if you intend to do it for 40 days. It can be done and has been done. Some people that would do a fast like this may only pick 1 to 3 days during each of those weeks to do a complete fast. Maybe that's something to consider, but that is one way to do it. Another one is a selective fast. This is where you choose certain things to fast from. There's the Daniel fast that's based out of Daniel in the Old Testament, where he gave up basically meats, breads, and sweets. And so that's a Daniel fast that you could do. But it can be anything. You could just choose one thing that you give up, one food item that you consume very frequently that you could give up. That would be a selective fast. There's just a partial fast, which is where only certain times during the day that you fast. You may pick a certain time slot. I know that people do this even as part of a regular diet, even at times. But, there was the Jewish fast, which would be basically fasting from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. So there's lots of ways to do that. That would be your partial fast. Then there's the soul fast. In a soul fast, you're giving up something that maybe takes away from focus. It's something that you maybe do a lot. It's not a food item or a drink item, but it's something you participate in that really can, with the absence of that, you can focus on God and focus on other things. Some people give up social media. Some people give up television, just as an example of a soul fast. Now, the important thing is the void that is left in fasting needs to be filled with things like prayer, reading God's word. When you miss what you're fasting from, let it be a reminder of what you're fasting for. What is your impossibility? What is standing in front of you right now that maybe is a mountain that you would love for God to move in your life? I don't know what that might be, but I encourage you to name that impossibility and let that be the motivation to go into perhaps a time of fasting for 40 days. I'm asking you to at least prayerfully consider doing that. It's optional. It doesn't mean that if you don't do that, shame on you, you're a horrible Christ follower. It's something that is truly optional, and it's a commitment. And I would encourage you that once you believe that God is leading you to do it, to go for it, to say, okay, this is going to be a 40-day commitment. I'm going to do it. For our context here in the year 2020 with Hickory Grove Baptist Church, that fast begins on March 3rd and it ends on Easter Sunday. It's a wonderful season to be depending on the Lord when we break that fast as we celebrate His resurrection on Easter Sunday. If you are choosing to do this, I encourage you to share it with your small group. This could be your prayer warriors for you. This could be your team. This could be your squad that can keep you accountable, be praying for you. You can even keep in touch with each other during the week outside of group time to see how the fasting's going, and even naming your impossibility to your group so they can be praying specifically for that. And listen, all this is being done not to just try to be creative or just coming up with stuff to do. There's a purpose behind this. God can do anything. Do you believe that? I believe that, and I hope you believe that too. And so let's begin to trust in Him like never before. Let's begin to be intentional about naming our impossibility, naming our mountain that needs to be moved before God, and trusting in Him to do something. And as we fast and pray and lean into His Word over the next 40 days, it could be an opportunity for us to grow in our faith, depend on Him like never before, even grow closer as a group together in this journey, and then be able to celebrate what God has done because of it. We don't know what He's going to do, but we trust Him to do what is best for us and what is best for how He wants to use our lives to glorify Him. Enjoy discussing this together as a group, and make sure you leave time to pray together as a group. Because again, if all things are possible with Him, then we need to spend time talking to Him about our impossibilities. Enjoy doing that together as well. And let's get ready to see God do the impossible.